welcome back to the Paulie G Show, coming to you live from high atop Mount Georgia. How are you today? Happy Friday. We are now in fall, late September 2022. Tonight, I am off to see the Ringo Starr and his all-star band show, for which I am quite excited. I'm going to finally see a Beatle, and that's pretty cool. But we're here today to talk about Telecasters, Fender Telecasters. So the Telecaster is the first commercially viable electric guitar to come along. It was started production in 1950, and it was known in that first year as the Fender Broadcaster. Now, about 1 year into their production, Leo Fender received a letter from the Gretsch Musical Instrument Company, kindly asking them not to use the name Broadcaster because they had a line of drums and banjos called the Broadcaster line. Contrary to popular myth, they did not sue the Fender company. They simply sent them a letter, and Leo acquiesced, and being the frugal and smart businessman that he was, he simply took his decals that said Fender Broadcaster and snipped off the word Broadcaster. So for the better part of 1951, this was just a Fender guitar. People today call those no-casters. They weren't called no-casters then, but if you ever saw one of those available, it'd be worth a pretty sizable amount of money. But with the advent of television coming along in the early 1950s, the phrase telly was finding its way into a lot of products, and of course Leo seized upon that opportunity and named this the now infamous Telecaster. But that guitar would have looked very much like this facsimile of an early 50s Fender Telecaster with its butterscotch coating, its black guard pickguard, a single coil bridge pickup, which had flat poles, a three-piece barrel type saddle, which is a little bit hard to intonate, but we're in the first electric guitar here, right? So technology, has to change and evolve, right? And then, of course, the famous front pickup, most people call that's a lipstick pickup because it looks very much like a lipstick case to some people. So that was the configuration. Of course, a maple neck. In those days, it would have been quite a fat maple neck. They've since slimmed them down and made them in various shapes, such as this D-shaped one that I have here. And there is a truss rod which would have been inserted in what we call this skunk stripe here. And in the early Telecasters, that adjustment location would have been in the back here of the neck, which would have meant that in order to adjust your action, you would have had to remove the neck to adjust the relief. Not the action so much, but the relief of the neck. Again, new technologies, new great ideas. Now, of course, they're up front, much easier to access. You don't have to disassemble the guitar to adjust that. But, the Telecaster is known as, a highly versatile guitar. Some would say the most versatile. Some would say the 335 is, but it definitely rates right up there in its ability to play multiple styles of music. It first started out in the jazz and country genres before there was really rock and roll. And then it made its way, maybe less so initially in rock, but definitely highly sought after in the country genre. And then, of course, it became actually a staple in rock music in many ways as well. But they looked very much like this until 1955, where they started to change colors of pickguards. add other features like a rosewood fretboard, which I'll talk about. But for the better part of the early 50s, it would have looked exactly like this. And today, you know, there's any number of reissue models. Everyone's doing reissues. And of course, Fender is no different. And this, in a sense, is really a 1952 reissue, in a sense, of that, you know, guitar. So some things were just made right correctly in the first place, and they've never really been improved upon. And, you know, it's interesting to me that I can think of really no other invention or technology that embraces antiquity as much as the electric guitar. You know, when you think of, you know, the telephone or any other invention that's come along, it doesn't look anything like what it did 50 or 60 or 70 years ago. But now with guitars, the whole idea is to try to make it as much like it was in the 50s as possible. So it's an interesting thing there. But this particular guitar I've had for a number of years, and I've just played countless hours on it. It's featured very prominently on my North and South album. Many of the tracks that I wrote and recorded were done on this guitar. By the way, available in your any fine record store, or also on all of your favorite streaming locations. So Spotify, iTunes, Apple, Amazon, it's all there. So please check out Paul Georgia, North and South. Brilliant music right there. Shameless plug there. But anyway, you know, the Telecaster, I think it's just the simplicity of it is what makes it so great. You know, the single coil pickup, single volume, single tone. This one I switched around and put the volume knob here. Typically the selector switch would be up front, then volume, then tone. I sort of reversed these around because I wanted to see if it would be easier to access it for volume swells, and it's really kind of working out nicely there. But otherwise, it's a very standard configuration Telecaster. They come in a variety of variations. Wow, poor choice of words there. But a lot of different configurations of these, from P90 pickups. You know, of course, Keith Richards is famous for having a humbucker in the neck position. Although very few people actually use those. Almost everyone that plays a Telecaster, for the most part, plays, you know, in the bridge position. Although I do have to say, this particular lipstick pickup has a really, really nice... has a nice warm tone to it. So I like this pickup as well, and I've done a lot of tracks with that as well. But for the most part, everyone seems to enjoy playing these for that twanginess, that famous step. You want to get that spank, that's going to happen back here in the bridge position. So, as I said, you know, these come in a variety of styles and configurations these days. And I have another example here of one that I bought at, this one was actually the first guitar that I bought at Norman's Rare Guitars in Los Angeles. It was my first trip out there. I believe it would have been 2015. And I was just kind of poking around and saw this amazing looking Telecaster, which is ice metallic blue. It has a rosewood fretboard, a slab board, mind you. Rosewood fretboard, slab board? Yeah, that is a slab board, which means it's a solid piece of rosewood, as opposed to a laminate, which some in the CBS era of the Fenders, some of these and the Stratocasters they used layered or laminate rosewood boards. Doesn't really impact the sound. The only thing to risk there is if you're going to do a lot of refretting, you may run out of real estate there on the board. But what really sold me on this, aside from the custom shop pickups and the fact that it's a limited edition, it's not a custom shop, it's a limited edition. I think they did 500 of each color, and there were 5 colors altogether. So it was a very limited run, but what got me was the matching headstock. They rarely do that on Telecaster. They rarely do them on Strats either. So when I see one, I just had to have it. So, but aside from it being, highly ornamented and decorative, the configuration and the sound is very, very much like a standard Telecaster, right? So it's another, just example of, a lot of showiness to it, but when you come right down to it, it has that really basic Telecaster style. My brother Robbie used to say that the Telecaster is the fine line between junk and genius. And I think there is something to that, right? It's not a Les Paul. It's not filled with, mother of pearl inlays and binding and all of those things. It's really just a very utilitarian and functional and great guitar. I'll leave you with one more thought on these, and one of the things that I see people do sometimes on these is put a Bixby tremolo arm. Please, don't do that, okay? First of all, it's bad luck, all right? And second of all, it just looks goofy. I love Bixby's on a Gretsch, maybe, a 335, maybe a Les Paul, but please don't put it on your Telecaster. Don't do that, please. I beg of you. Just kidding. Do what you want. It's a free country. That's what makes America great. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say about Telecasters. I think my next video, I'll probably get into my Les Paul collection and talk about those. Until then, I just wanted to say hello and say that I hope you're doing great. And I will leave you with my final thought, which is when it comes to guitars, you only need one more. See you next time.